So let me introduce myself briefly. My name is Ricardo Garcia. I'm from Madrid, Spain, and I'm head of accessibility and digital inclusion for Atos, French company, for Spain and Portugal. And I'll describe myself briefly, or try to. So I'm a white male, short cropped hair. My wife says I look like a US Marine, but anyway. In my, gray, actually. Used to be a bit blonder, but not any longer. In my early 50s. And I'm really excited to introduce this panel about inclusive finances and inclusive banking. And I'm going to ask my fellow panelists to please introduce themselves briefly, and then we can jump into the discussion, because I'm sure we're going to have quite a few topics that are going to be really interesting to discuss, and probably a few questions that we may want to touch on. So please go ahead. We're going to start with, and I'm really bad with names. So Samuel? Please.
Thank you very much. My name is Samuel Kabue. I'm a black male from Nairobi, Kenya. And I think I'm wearing a black trouser. And my pronouns are he or his. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. So my name is Mwithiga. I head digital channels at Absa Bank Kenya PLC. I'm quite happy to be here today, very inspired with the conversations that are happening. To describe myself, I'm a black male, late 30s, black hair, though some say I'm sporting a bit of white hair. I'm wearing a navy blue jacket, a white shirt, and gray pants. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Polycarp Ndelkana. I head the financial services with M-pesa. To describe myself, I'm a black male, black hair, wearing spectacles, and navy blue jacket with blue pants and the brown shoes. Excited to be here. I think the conversation is fantastic. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. And before I jump into some of the topics that I've got here in my notes, I want to thank inABLE and especially Irene for being so kind to invite me in this case. And this is being a really, really impressive experience, a great learning experience. And I think this is what it's all about. Learning, sharing, and connecting. Connecting the dots and connecting people and networking. So having said that, let's jump into the into this discussion around inclusive financial services. And let me just briefly touch on some of the things before we jump into what fintech are doing or maybe not doing, and what some banks are doing or not doing in terms of making their services and their products accessible or usable, but by all their customers, including those with disabilities, including older ones. Let me touch briefly on something that's going on in Spain lately, but probably in many other countries. And this has to do with obviously the shift to digital that we're going to be talking about here today and its consequences. So what's happened in the last few months is that there's been a gentleman that started a campaign in change.org. And the name of this campaign is, in English, "I'm old, not an idiot." Okay, so with that you can imagine where he's aiming at, right? What he's aiming at. Just to say that this campaign, as of today, has reached more than, well, I didn't look the numbers, but more than 600,000 signatures, or people actually registering. So that's huge. And this is all about, or this is really a consequence of the shift to digital by many banks, large banks in Spain, and not so large, and closing down of branches, physical branches. In particular in rural areas, small towns or small villages, where you have a higher percentage probably of an aging population. And basically what they're saying is that they're not used to using digital. They can hardly use ATMs, many of them. They're used to having a human to talk to and to ask, to discuss, what their, their finances are. And that no longer happens, right? So what our banks are doing about that, right? I mean, some banks have actually, reacted to that possibility because I mean, there was involvement by the Spanish government as well. Hey, this is outrageous, this and that. Yeah, but we knew that was happening, that was coming, and it took this gentleman to start this campaign to bring this to the public eye, right? So there's some banks, I mean, not as large probably as the ones in the US, maybe other countries, but pretty large banks, some of them like CaixaBank, they've got 4 million customers 65 or older. So that's a pretty significant chunk, right, of their whole customer base. Right? So I just wanted to bring this to your attention because we are talking about accessibility, and many of us work in this field. How do we make our products, our services, our interfaces accessible, compliant with the standards, web content accessibility guidelines, so forth. But maybe it's not only about making all these interfaces more accessible, usable, but we have to probably dig a bit deeper into what's going on with other populations, and whether this works, or what we are doing, shifting to digital, actually works for all our customers, in particular, if we have millions of them that may be struggling with what we are offering them, right? So please, Samuel, if you could tell us about, I've got a ton of questions here, but, and I'm struggling, I'm squinting. You can see that I'm squinting right now. I'm trying to resist to use glasses, but still I try to do my best here. So what are the barriers? Can you tell us a bit more about the barriers that exist for persons with disabilities when using digital or mobile banking or payment systems? And I know this is pretty broad question, but what's your take on this, please?
Thank you very much. This is important for me and for many who use alternative digital services or alternative accessibility, the need for accessibility. We believe or we have experienced the digital era in two ways. One, the ICT era and the whole question of assistive technology, as we know it today, it could be either an enabler or a disabler for people with disabilities. It could bring about inclusion, and it could also bring about exclusion. And in this era, when all economy is geared towards the digital operations, we are having problems because we seem to be going back and forth, particularly among people with disabilities, in being unable to cope with the changes that come with the digital changes.
So we're going to move on. Andrew, please. Samuel has, I think, mentioned your organization and some of the good stuff that you guys are doing. So I was going to ask you about, in connection to what Samuel has just mentioned, but also in connection to standards. We're talking about standards, we're talking about best practices, how you guys are actually working on that field, right? Implementing internal policies that eventually render really good results or good products, right? And also in connection to the standards that have just been approved here in the country.
Yeah, thank you, Ricardo. First of all, thank you, Samuel, for the feedback. Feedback is the breakfast of champions, and we can only improve by taking positive feedback positively to improve on ourselves, obviously. So obviously for the financial service industry, just starting from an industry perspective, is that From 2019, Kenya Bankers Association, inABLE, and Financial Sector Deepening in Kenya, took on the customer satisfaction survey, and with a specific nuance to, assessing our accessibility as an industry. And I think that was to allow us, independently assess those elements of friction. First, the level of, understanding, and also the elements of friction when it comes to differently enabled persons within our country. And I think with that, there are a couple of learnings, and it was very skewed towards the shift to a more digitally led world. People using more mobile and internet banking as their preferred mode of banking. So for us at Absa, that is something that's part and parcel of our inclusivity. And to start off, and thank Samuel that you're one of our customers and using our channels, was to say that it obviously starts by increasing the level of awareness even within our colleagues as an organization. So for us, was as part of our service standards, we're saying how do we embed the elements of being able to train and equip our staff and even our support staff within our branches and our offices to be able to offer services. And it's just moving away from, KYC or know your customer. Can you move to what we call feel your customer, which is embedding in our service standards what we call heart. Heart is being helpful, able, empathetic, responsive and trustworthy to the customer. And that becomes it's a core part of our service standards, and it's something that we continuously renew even to our customers at the front line, such that we remove those frictions to persons with disabilities in terms of accessing our banking services. A number of the things that Samuel have touched on obviously requires a rethink around how we develop not only our products but also our digital channels. And in digital, we always talk about design thinking, and design thinking is putting the human at the center of everything we do. I was quite moved by something that Julia said during his panel about it's a person first. And to that end, out of the accessibility study, we have onboarded a partner to do a complete review of our user experience from a point of accessibility, which again then addresses those gaps whereby we might be almost working cross purposes, because the intention about inclusivity as far as financial services is that it should not be to build such that to include one person based on either disabilities or any other criteria. So that's a key part of it. Obviously for us, there are also very many quick wins. And in terms of mobility has been mentioned in terms of our branches, our facilities and our ATMs, and also where there are challenges in terms of visual and auditory challenges. I think there's a lot that can be done. I think the starting step obviously for us is with the development of the standards as an industry. And I think what is coming out of that is one, being able to develop this digital accessibility roadmap, which means there's a clear list of priority areas that as an industry and ourselves as an organization are working on. And this is something that we will be making returns on every July of every year, just giving the roadmap of where we are. To date, 31 banks, and this is from an industry perspective, have submitted that. And again, it's going back to the point of, with a deeper understanding around the principles of accessibility, when you say, have you done pouring on your website, on your mobile app, on your documentation, is part of that journey. I think also there's a need of continuous training. That goes without saying, is to say that more and more as the standards develop, as we see how these standards are alleviating those friction points as far as accessing financial services, that we're also keeping colleagues within the organization abreast of that. I think also as an industry, there is acknowledgement of the Persons with Disability Day every 3rd of December, which from 2020 then we've been taking up to also then bring heightened awareness. So for me, it is a journey. It's a journey that has been taken head on. And I guess to sort of the earlier panels, I think we strive for progress, not perfection, because this is a journey as an industry that we've taken and quite steadfast to ensure that we're able to meet those milestones and be able to access financial services without excluding anyone. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much, Andrew. I think you laid out really, really well what you guys are doing and your aspirations and all the achievements that you've reached so far. So great ton of knowledge there. Thank you for sharing. And Polycarp, so can you please tell us about you guys at M-pesa? M-pesa is really well known, I guess, in Africa, in Kenya, in Africa, and in many other countries as a really great example of a payment method. So Could you please tell us a bit of what are you guys been working on to make M-pesa accessible and usable by the most users, including those that have accessibility needs, of course?
Right. Thanks a lot. I think at M-pesa we have one vision. We've M-pesa and Safaricom, we've gone to decide to have one purpose, to become a technology purpose-led, and to leave no one behind. Everything we do, we're now driving that focus of not leaving anyone behind. And I think it's, as Andrew said, it's a journey that everyone needs to get into, and we started this journey a while back. I think over time we've been engaging different organizations and to try to see how do we include everyone. For instance, in 2017, because of the challenges we found out about how do the people with disabilities faced in terms of accessing the balances within the M-pesa accounts, we started a voice confirmation or an IVR check. You could dial in you could dial in 100, follow the prompt, and we'll tell you your balance. So those were some of the initial steps we started growing, and eventually over time, we needed to now grow bigger and see where can we do, what can we do more. And the need that we saw in the industry and M-pesa and the economy, what it's doing, is we had to come in to say, who can we partner? 2018, we started speaking to Dot Incorporated. How do we bring in Dot Rails? So we enabled and partnered and launched a Dot Braille watch, and that we've been working together with the Kenya Union of the Blind to just see how do we distribute that. The Braille watch allows any person, a blind person, to be able to receive an SMS and get to see what transaction he has done on the watch themselves. It will give them their balance, it will tell them if he has received any incoming payment, they will be able to notice it. And I think we've managed to distribute a lot. We've moved it to the agency network also, so that we enable. I think our key pillars that we work on every day is accessibility, empowerment, sustainability around M-pesa. So how do we include everyone so that they could use the service? How do we empower the agents and anyone who is blind to become an agent of M-pesa to be able to also transact and offer services as any other person? So we have worked through that. I think the learnings we've been learning throughout the process is also data accessibility. So we started an initiative with the Kenya Union of the Blind on how do you register the blind using a USSD shortcode, so that we now gather data, we get to know who our customers are, how do we get to reach them easily, and offer the services and learn together. I think that's been a process. This year, we now try to improve a bit. We partnered with us, with Sign Media to launch an Assist All app. This is mainly for the hearing impaired, so that can be able to be helped. You walk into any Safaricom shop now, we are enabling our customer service to be able to attend to people with disabilities and be able to give that service. I think it's a culture that we're trying to embed, we're trying to drive, and as we bring in new people every day, it's something we're building to drive that vision. Become a purpose-led technology organization to not leave anyone behind. I think that has been, it's a core of what we want to do and how to get everyone inclusive. Yeah, thank you.
That's great. Thank you. You've mentioned the term partnerships several times, and I think that's so important. You're working together with the guys that know the stuff, that are closer to the people that they serve, blind people, deaf people. So I think that's really a great pathway to success, as we've mentioned earlier during the session. So Samuel, I'm going to go back to you, and I'm going to go through some quick questions, and for the sake of time, I don't know how much we've got left, but 4 minutes, I'm being told, okay? So we need a really quick answer. Samuel, training and resources, what do you think is needed to better support people with disabilities in accessing financial services? So that would be 1 minute.
I think the training that is needed let's not just look at the point of those who receive the service. Those who give the service, I think the continued training on the preparation of these platforms to ensure that they are universally designed so that we are able, all of us, to access. That is one of the areas that is very, very important. Certainly, we do have a problem on the supply side because those who receive the service, sometimes they are limited by the equipment that is required by the hardware, be it a smartphone or a computer with the necessary software. So that would be one area of training. And
another one, real quick. You can mention.
I think those are the two, the demand side and the supply side. The demand are those who need the service. They need to be endowed with the necessary hardware and software, and the supply side needs to train its developers to come up with the equipments that are usable by all.
Thank you, Samuel. So Andrew, real quick, you mentioned the roadmap that you guys have. Where are you guys right now in that roadmap, you could say, just in a few words? And how much is left? I know that's not easy to answer.
Yeah, yeah, like I say, it's definitely a journey. I think there are quick wins, like I mentioned, in terms of, so we've started off obviously skewed very much to digital access because of the industry and the fact that we're a lot of digitally led business models. Like I said, there's quite a bit to be done. In terms of the quick wins for mobility, that has been covered. In terms of the digital channels, we should be doing a revamp this side of the year to really guide us around the investments around assistive technology, what we need to do to make our services more accessible. I think from an industry perspective, as I mentioned, 31 banks have submitted that. It's something that we'll submit every July of every year. And that's also great strides. I think from our perspective, also from a data point of view, as an organization, as Absa is identifying these customers, so that then we're able to map out the right kind of customer journeys and be able to provide the necessary support through our different points of contacts. So as you mentioned, it's a journey, but participating in such forums, being able to learn and open and expand our thinking even as we prioritize is very key. And in closing, I've really enjoyed the session, and that's where we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. That's great. And finally, Polycarp, just going back to partnerships that I really like what you mentioned, what would be the upcoming ones? Could you share very briefly any other partnerships that you may have in mind, bringing in people that know what the needs are?
Yeah, thanks. I think to us, the journey, we can't walk alone. We are not the experts in such areas, and it's key. So I think our journey is now moving to see how best do we now improve the services? How do we bring it more inclusive? So we're looking for partnerships, particularly driving a fully voice-enabled M-pesa platform whereby people with visual impairment, with hearing impairment, can be able to use this service with ease. So we're looking now to move, where can we bring in the next phase of technology, AI, to enable us to have a fully voice-integrated platform? How do we bring that into reality? And I think it's the partnerships that we're seeking out. And and bringing in, again, enabling and working close with the Kenya Union of the Blind to really now test our experience. I think Samuel has mentioned one of the challenges is we tend to now, once in a while, skip this part of the process when we're doing updates in our platforms, in our services, and we miss those key experiences that we need to make sure they're embedded within our own cultures and experiences.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you so much, Polycarp. And that kind of sounds like an invitation for, to partner with other organizations. So with that, I think we're going to wrap. Thank you for your attention. I think it's been a great learning. It's definitely been for me. And I'm looking forward to talking further after this session and probably later today. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. and the other sessions. Thank you so much.